All right, well, everyone, welcome to Ready, Set, Data. And you will notice that it's not our normal crew tonight. Um, O'Grady and Anthony could not be present. And so we have a different person on the screen. We're going to be talking to Ian Schreier, a 25-year IT veteran, certified professional career coach. And we're going to be looking at topics around job and career changes tonight. And so, Ian, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Um, I have been in IT after school about approaching 23 years, over 25 if you count before I completed my college education. Uh, I have worked in the IT infrastructure field for the full extent of that time. I've worked at companies as small as 4 or 5 people. I've worked with companies as
Hmm.
large as 30,000. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's been a pretty good spread. Um, so I've, as you might imagine, seen a few things uh, in many different places in many different ways. Um,
Yeah, I bet.
yeah, so I guess if you wanted to go into my coaching side, a couple of years ago, I started considering what the next phase of my IT career might be. I
Hmm.
looked at my own interests, found that I wanted to help people who are ready to help themselves and start and grow their own careers, IT included. Um, I went after and obtained the Certified Professional Career Coach designation, and I have been working with people local to my home area, as well as all the way out to Toronto and Johannesburg, South Africa, uh, assisting uh, uh, people who want to better their career. They want to make that step up, or they want to get started. They want to navigate a career issue. I do have the ability to assist with non IT questions and concerns. However, my own personal interest is IT.
Okay. That's quite a spread of information there. I had no idea, actually, even though we've known each other. I don't remember how long, but I don't remember us really talking about the spread of size of companies. And so that was interesting to learn.
Yes, yes, indeed.
So you talked about, kind of getting into career coaching and wanting to help people with that. What is so a common thing that happens is, you're in a job for a while and you're comfortable. Maybe I'm going to go with the comfortable route. You're comfortable. You look around and maybe you really kind of sense that you're too comfortable, and you think maybe it's time that you want to make a job change. How does someone go about determining, yes, it's time, or no, it's not time, I should stay longer? How do What do you tell people when they bring you that kind of scenario or question?
Um, I think back first to experience with a college friend a couple of years after college. Uh, called me. We were chatting. He said, "Hey, do you remember Kevin?" I'm like, "Yeah." Uh, didn't like him too much, but I remember him. He's like, "Well, yeah, he's got a great new job. He's getting paid a lot. He's got a brand new house. He's got a brand new car." And I was just kind of sitting there thinking, "But is he still a jerk?" And my friend said, "Well, yeah, pretty much. He's still the same jerk he was back in college." And it was kind of a reminder to me that even though you may see somebody with all these things that you may want somewhere down the line, um, all of these things are not a destination or a goal per se. They can be along the way, but the career is a path, and personal development is a path that you just kind of take on your own for yourself, first and foremost. And you should never, ever, ever compare your your successes to other people's achievements. You always have to focus and support and celebrate your own wins on your own timeline. Um, that being said, if you think of that in a career perspective, and let's say I'm an early career IT person and I have, um, I've been in a maybe support role, maybe I've taken a step up, I'm approaching a senior support role, or maybe I'm early in a senior support role,
Mm-hmm.
and not the easiest job in the world. It's can be rough. You can definitely kind of walk out of your day and feel a little beat up. Um, so let's say, well, yeah, I'm at a good place, um, but maybe there's not a lot of room for advancement, and I want to make the next step. Maybe I want to focus on a different aspect of IT that I'm personally interested in. Um, Maybe there are personal personality reasons. You don't have a great relationship with your boss, your team members. You don't like the culture. All valid reasons. So the first thing to do when you think about this is sit down and just brain dump. Write everything that you do like and that you don't like about your career and your
Mm-hmm.
current job out. Um, the goal here is to get you to not have it in your head, but to look at it and kind of assess a value to each one and say, hey, what's most important here? Um, this is not going to follow a specific scale. It's not going to be the same for every time you do this or every person who does it. But again, focus on your own merits. If you put enough negatives or big enough negatives in that column, you say, man, I don't think I'm going to get that advancement. I don't think I'm going to get that skills growth. I'm not going to be interested in, supporting end users at a low or middle level. Then it may be time for a change. That's a simple overarching way, but it's all not based on what anybody else is doing. Once again, based on what you want and what you want to set as your goal and your focus going forward.
Okay. Yeah, that was really insightful. So it sounds like the list that you're talking about isn't just a pros and cons, but it's either like a weighted or prioritized pros and cons. Is that a fair summary of what you're suggesting people should do?
Um, I've done it both ways before. I was uh, I was given an offer many years ago to leave and go to a different type of organization or stay at the one that I really did like quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was having such difficulty trying to negotiate that, say, man, what do I do here? So in that case, I did actually list out all the things I thought were important, and I asked, for clear answers for each opportunity, each job. And I did assess a points scale. One is the least, three is the highest. And I did determine that for the moment, it was best to stay where I was at.
Okay.
Um, so again, it's all fluid. It's based on what will work for you, but it's always best to have these things out of your head and kind of, get them in front of you in some other way so you can use the rest of that part of your brain to kind of assess and think and just look forward.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other methods and things like that, but it's about finding what's right for you personally.
So talk a little bit about I like the idea of getting stuff out of your head. Why is that so important? What does that do for you as a person who's trying to figure out, do I leave this job for something else?
Well, I get together with some IT friends uh, pretty often, and we are one is a business executive in IT and kind of a little project management. One is a site core developer, and then there's me, and we all kind of determine, and it seems to be a theme across IT people that we tend to be overthinkers, and
Okay.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes the the brain is it's our money maker, right? It's our knowledge
For
and our
sure.
time that makes us money, and when it's our only weapon, if you will, we often lose sight of how to use it in a different fashion. So we may be, you could call it, cycling over things over and over in our head, like I was with that one job decision. Um, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. It wasn't a productive exercise. I had to, and you could do it visually however you wanted.
Hmm.
But I had to put that information in another place where I could see it and I could react differently to it. Um, I wanted something different that would help inform my decision making. And sometimes with cerebral people like IT people, uh, it's again, the method isn't as important as the act of changing things up and changing your view.
Right. Okay. So I mean, I know that in the past when I've had a practice of journaling, and for years and years when I was much younger, I did this. I don't do it so much anymore. Perhaps I should. But my point about bringing that up is, as I reflect on doing that, I can remember a lot of times that as I would journal and write, thoughts and ideas would come out of me that I wasn't even aware were there, and they would often surprise me. And I think that certainly could be an advantage to this method you're talking about of writing it down somewhere, because you might be surprised about what you see, and it helps you assess your own thoughts and how you might want to make this decision and which direction you're going to go in. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And journaling is, not only done in like individual and what would you call it, therapy opportunities, sessions with therapists, or in between sessions, things like that. But some people just get a lot of comfort by doing it on a daily, weekly, whatever basis when they feel that they are not coming to a solution otherwise. Just another method to dump those thoughts out and look at them a different way. Just get that perspective changing.
right, right, for sure. So I want to go back to something else that you said earlier. You said that everybody's on their own journey, and you talked a little bit about comparing yourself to someone else's journey and someone else's career journey. How does that hurt you as a person who's trying to make a decision about switching a job? If you're comparing, if I'm busy comparing myself to somebody either in my own company or maybe they're outside my company, how does that hinder my ability to make a decision about whether I should switch jobs?
Well, I guess if you want to start at the personal level, we have to accept that every individual is a different person. There are no two, I use the term snowflakes. Oh, you're a little snowflake, but no two of us are exactly alike the other. We we are unique people. We have unique backgrounds. We have unique skills, and we have unique reasons on the day to day for doing what we do. A person who goes and into an office and is an accountant, you know, and loves forensic accounting, has different drives and motivations and interests than a person maybe who does some aspect of IT.
Hmm.
So we have to firstly respect the uniqueness and the individuality of the person. Now, when you go back to even before like making an IT decision, if you go back, you want to make a job decision. Um, You will have a lot of people, oftentimes, if you have a good circle of friends, telling you how to do a job search, why to leave your job, why not to leave your job, when is a good time to do it, when is not. You're going
Hmm.
to get a lot of advice, some of it good, some of it very bad, from all sorts of people. The important thing is that you largely trust your gut on whatever you take in and you react to. So if I am comparing myself to this guy, Kevin, right out of school, Kevin, I believe, was a coder of some kind. Uh, uh, I don't remember exactly what he coded. Pretty sure it wasn't web. It was probably C or C++ or Java or something like that at the time. And obviously, like, he found a way to make good money and get a bunch of stuff. But that doesn't have to be somebody else because it's not the same person. And that may seem oversimplified, but it really comes down to that we are different people who do things differently for different reasons. Um, if you want to take that even further and you want to look at people wanting to consider an IT career change, say somebody uh, wants to go from support to security.
Hmm.
Security for the last several years has been, a big, big money making field. There's a lot of need. There's
Yeah.
still a lot of need for it. But and you can chase a lot of paper and you can get it too if you're good at what you do. But that is not a guarantee of happiness. And if you're not in alignment with what you personally want and understanding your goals and your needs as a person, and you go after something like that, man, the worst thing I can think of is 6 months in, you're sitting at your desk and it's 3 in the morning and you're responding to an on call for somebody's complaining about the firewall, as it happens, which it isn't, and it isn't, and you have to convince them. You're
Yeah.
3 in the morning. It's just like, I don't want to do this. This is not what I signed up for.
Yeah. That doesn't
Well,
sound like fun times.
no, no, and it's like, yeah, you got all these other cool things. You can buy a nice car and all that, but you're a prisoner now to what you've decided. So making these kind of changes is a commitment, no matter the field, no matter the pay rate. It's a commitment, and you owe it to yourself to make the most informed commitment possible. And you can't do that if you look at somebody else's grass and say, "Oh, well, the grass is greener." It's like, but yeah, but I hate to use the term, but look at all the carnage buried in the backyard that's helping it grow.
Right.
Sometimes it is that way. Look at all the people you had to step on to get there, for example. Not everything is that's green is healthy.
Sure. And I think especially in these in these days of social media where you can certainly have this false sense that you know someone because you see them posting on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever social media you follow. If you don't really know them as a friend, they're just an acquaintance, or maybe it's a person in your industry that you idolize. You're doing that from a distance. You're only getting a partial picture, and you fill in the gaps with other assumptions or with no information at all. And so that person might be making a ton of money, but they also might be secretly miserable. Like you're talking about, they've gone into a field that, they're raking in the dough, but they're also crying themselves to sleep every night, metaphorically, hopefully not literally, um, but you don't see that. They're probably not going to talk about that on Twitter and LinkedIn. And so I think that can that can certainly do us more harm than good when we compare ourselves that way.
Yeah, it brings up something. I know that you've talked about imposter syndrome. I'm sure a lot
Hmm.
on this show. I forget where I heard it, but somebody intelligent somewhere wrote or said something that I picked up, and it's just so true. And that is that the world is full of people that you'll meet every day who are deathly afraid, like successful people, so successful
On the
and
outside.
achieving their goal, yeah, and they are deathly afraid of being found out as frauds when they're
Yeah.
not. But but you have to, you just can't uh, get to this. You can't present just a happy face. You can't get to this high level, or so you would have people believe, and expect the emotional support and the interest and the drive to backfill itself. It's not going to
Right.
fill in that ditch. You have to have that before you get there if you want to lean towards being happy in your career, especially IT.
Right. So I think what we're saying so far up to this point is, in terms of trying to make a decision about whether you should make a job change or now or not, look in here, look into your own self, and not look outside and take on other people's values, or ideals. Look and see what's important to you. Make a pros and cons list and look at it in several different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have 10 cons and 30 pros? Or maybe you have the reverse. You have 30 cons and 10 pros. Also, if you have a relatively even list, prioritize that list. Weight the things that you've put into the list. Give them a sense of how important is each one of those things,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of helping. And then figure out what you want. And as part of doing that process I just described, that helps you figure out what you want. It's not always about money. It's not always about um, location or the kind of work or the boss or whatever. It's usually the summation of a number of those things together that kind of helps you figure out, yeah, I want to leave, or no, I think I'm going to stay.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't want to discount like the external experience as well. Obviously, if you have a manager who's being unprofessional, if you have a workload that's just not able to be managed in a way that is good for you personally, these are
Hmm.
important too. Like way early in my career, uh, I worked for a company, a small company, about 5 people at the time, and uh, we were cleaning out the server and prep room in the back of our suite. And so I was in the back with a couple trash cans and throwing things away and getting things ready to be recycled in certain cases.
Hmm.
And my boss said, "Hey, give me that trash can, would you?" And I put it closer to him. He's like, "No, over here." And I'm like, "Okay." And I put it where I thought he meant it went to go. And he's like, "Here, I'll do it." And he takes the trash can. And it just occurred to me, if I'm not a good enough garbage man for this guy, I'm not going to be a very good IT consultant for him either. And that for me it was the sign, right? Sometimes the sign
Yeah.
is comes from inside, and sometimes it's just like real clear on the outside. and
Yeah.
and that was one of those
Quack,
times.
quack,
So
quack.
yeah, yeah, it's just the siren goes off, and it's just
Right.
within 3 months I was gone. um
Yeah.
but so I wouldn't say discount the external. I would
Hmm.
say listen and observe the external, but definitely find a way to be in touch with your internal decision making process and your values, and reflect it all together.
Right. Okay. Um, Hey, Spirit. So glad that you could join us. Um,
Hello.
just because I want to ask one more question here, we'll kind of wrap up and transition kind of into the next logical question that we asked at the beginning.
Mhm.
I want to go back a few minutes. You said something about, I think, asking friends about advice or people wanting to give you advice, and they'll give you good advice, they'll give you not so good advice. What are some of the what's some of the bad advice that you've seen friends give each other about changing jobs?
I think it goes for job advice as much as it goes for life as well. Um, it, you know, I like to think of myself as a friend to my friends who will cut through BS and will, sometimes to a fault, tell them that they need to hear these things, right?
Okay.
Say it's not going to be pretty, but I'm going to tell you what's really going on to some extent without trying to intentionally hurt your feelings or make you
Okay.
feel slighted or insulted. A lot of friends cannot do this, right? And that's not a bad thing. A lot of friends are just going to be, man, they'll be there and support you no matter what, right? Ride or
Hmm.
die, right? And that's great. But we also know that friends will do that uh, as you're making the poor choices. Um, saw a meme on Facebook that said, it takes 13 letters to spell bad decisions, but it also takes 13 letters to spell shots. And it's like
Right.
some people will just send you down either path. And while you can take firstly your friend's advice into account, again, it's about you. They are not you. They don't have your goals. They don't have your ambitions and needs. Um,
Hmm.
if we want to talk about IT professionals, one of the things I would put as a top 10 do not do for folks who need to speak to a career coach is don't use your professional network as your career coach. This means
Hmm.
that if you have especially if you have complaints, but if you have concerns, complaints about your current situation, is it going to be helpful to call someone that you've worked with and trust and say, "Hey, I've got this problem. Would you mind if I explain it to you?" And then they give you their opinion. And to a certain extent, that is a good thing. But that kind of behavior can, bite you back when you've just asked your career circle, "Hey, my boss is a real jerk. What do you think I should do?" It's like, well, if you have professional contacts, they're not going to really want to know that you're having a tough time or that you're searching, necessarily, things like that. You can mind them, say, "Hey, if you hear of any opportunities, I would love to hear about it." But we have a tendency when we explain things at a personal level to go too deep. And we always, especially when we get emotional, have the capacity to go too far, get too deep, and become a little over the edge of professional. So while we can be judicious about reaching out to a contact or two,
Hmm.
doing something like venting over LinkedIn, uh, like saying open to work, uh, to everybody, viewable, while you're still in a tenuous position, not always the best choice.
Yeah. It sounds like you're saying that it's fine to talk to close inner circle friends, to try to get yourself some perspective, especially if you're lucky and have some friends who not only will cheer you on, but also will pull you back when it's necessary. Um, that part's fine. I think you're also saying that you want to be careful about how much you share beyond those inner circles,
Mhm.
and what kind of vibes you put out on the internet, like on LinkedIn, for example, or Twitter, as part of your figuring out whether you want to leave your job or not. So,
Yeah, for sure. It's all a balancing act, and anytime that you, especially in a professional presentation type of scenario like a LinkedIn, you always do want to try to put your best professional face forward. You get too emotional, you get too despondent, you get unhappy and you voice it in the wrong avenue, things can definitely go bad. You should definitely talk to someone, family, close non-professional friend, career coach even, who can, help you get on a path to making a decision, stay, leave, manage the problem, find another way to handle it, things like that.
right. Okay. So we have a comment in the chat, which is kind of interesting. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it, and then we're going to pivot. It's actually a good segue into the second half of what we're going to talk about. So, um, there's this idea that was presented, and we could go either direction. Doesn't really matter. It's there. We'll talk about it. That first full time job that you get, kind of definitely holds a big sway over the rest of your career. How to what how do you feel about that? To what degree can you agree with it? To what degree do you maybe disagree? What are some thoughts on that?
I feel like that suggestion does hold a good deal of truth to it. Um,
Okay.
um, I think that when you are early in your career, um, who you deal with and who you learn from and what you learn at your first, early series of jobs, especially the first one, can, you know, focus and set framework for, how you do things going forward. My
Hmm.
first job out of school was at a 8,000 person company that was purchased and rolled into a 30,000 person company. Um, and even when it was the smaller iteration, there was always a focus on best practices, uh, good communication, things of that nature, um, thoroughness in documentation. I feel like those things, and having learned those things early, have been helpful to me in my career. Um, uh, from a skill standpoint, and just kind of uh, guiding what I should do when I get to a new position and how I should do it.
Right.
Um, I would say that uh, I think a career, my grandmother would probably say your career is like much like she said about college. It's what you make of it.
Hmm. Sure.
And And so let's say, man, your first job is just not where you want to be, and you figure this out real quick, right? Um,
Right.
you as a professional and the manager of your career get to write your story. This is the story of you and your professional career, and if you want to tear up the manuscript at a certain point, start over. Not always easier, certainly more difficult as you go along, but uh, yeah, you get to be the arbiter of that. and you do have to take on the work and the effort that comes with it. But
Hmm.
man, a lot of people just think, a lot of people just don't feel like they have the empowerment and the control that they really do to manage things. They'll just be like, "Oh man, I'm in this job. I'm going to be in it for the next 40 years." It's like, well, not really. If you can commit to it, and obviously, easier said than done in many cases. But
Right.
don't ever, you know, don't ever sell yourself short, especially when it comes to writing your own career story.
Yeah. Certainly. I like that response. I can kind of agree with it mostly. It certainly held true for me. I mean, the first full time job I had, yeah, I don't know, but like what I would consider the first career job, something that actually could turn into a career, um, it certainly did shape what I did. So early on, I got into physical security, doing alarm monitoring, and I did that for 15 years. So and I learned what I liked. I learned what I didn't like. I learned what kind of bosses I liked, and I for sure learned what kind of bosses I didn't like.
Mhm.
And all of those things helped me make decisions about whether to change jobs or not. We also, though, don't have to stick with that. I shared a few weeks ago my story here on the Ready Set Data channel about my IT career and how I got into it from that physical security call center job that I had been in for 15 years. And as I transitioned, it kind of happened so slowly, my transition into IT, that I didn't really realize it was happening until I look back and I'm like, I'm in IT. How did that happen? Um, and then it became very purposeful where I was in kind of a liaison role between my company and a vendor and learned some things about the IT world and about the IT that we worked with at that company and was really interested and thought, I think I can make a career out of this thing. And I just went for it. And so it kind of leads us into this next part of our discussion is how do we know when it's time to make a career change or a career pivot? In my case, it was I'm going to go from call center supervisor and I'm going to move over here now and I'm going to work in IT. And in my case, that meant eventually it meant databases and Microsoft SQL Server. So how do we know when to make that move?
Um, I guess to start with that, I do want to take a step back and look at Spirit's statement that you also, in your first job, you also learned what you won't tolerate. Um,
Hmm.
uh, and I think that actually does apply to identifying a potential flag for needing a career or a focus change in
Okay.
IT. um, you know, Years ago, probably over 10 years ago now, I had a client that when Blackberries were still like a real thing, and they had BlackBerry Enterprise Server. Anybody who worked with BlackBerry Enterprise Server, I think, would say it's a great product when you don't have to make any changes. You change the slightest thing, it will go all screwy on you.
Yeah.
And I had a mid-level executive at a client here in town, 150 people, uh, had to get his phone set up
Hmm.
and was having problems with what's called Bez. And so I called the phone vendor and they transferred me to Research in Motion. And I'm on the phone with them. And the guy comes in like needing his phone. And I've been trying to fight the clock on this. I know he's going somewhere. And I said to the guy, "Hey, I know you need your phone. I really don't mean to inconvenience you. if you want to let me know where you will be, I will literally drive anywhere you're going and get you this phone when I am done. If you could please just afford me the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, instead of being like a mature adult, he came up to me, grabbed the phone out of my hand, walked out of the office, and threw it down the hall.
What?
Yeah,
Okay.
a grown 50, 55-year-old man threw an object down the hall. This is not like Tom Brady straight down. This is like this is like a Tom Brady pass, not a Tom Brady. I'm mad. I'm going to throw my surface on the field twice.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and
Oh my gosh.
and I'm like, huh, that's interesting and not particularly mature. Um,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
you know, in an earlier position in my career, same field, I might have just sat quietly and been like, "What the hell do I do?" But Spirit,
Yeah.
I I I, I think you're right. At sometimes it's not the first job though, but in those early career places, you start identifying things that you don't like, and you don't. Eventually, they become even bigger as don't like, don't want to do, not gonna do,
Right.
and and some of that would be things like after hours on call. I just in the last 7, 8, 9 years of my career, I've just said, I don't want to be awakened, and I don't want my wife to be awakened at 2:30 in the morning for somebody's email not working. I'm not interested in that anymore. And
Right.
and you do have you do set your boundaries, and you flag the things that you don't like about your job and your job focus. So support is a very easy um, area
Mm-hmm.
to trash because it's difficult. Let's say if I wanted to go from infrastructure to uh, DevOps. There can be good aspects of what you identify as a need to change also. So let's say I'm working infrastructure, let's say Azure, AWS, what have you, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
building a bunch of instances and I'm building things out and I'm doing things the old manual way with a little bit of automation here and there. And
Right.
then I start working with a DevOps team, and the DevOps team's like, oh, well, you could just script this way, and you could do it like automatically. You could take it from like 2 hours down to 5 minutes. When something, absolutely, when something goes off in your brain, just like, you're just like, I can do what? Oh, that sounds cool. I want to learn. And I think it sounds like from your story, it sounds like the same thing happened, where it's just kind of like, ah, that's kind of interesting. I think I'd like to know how exactly that happens. How does the man behind the curtain operate? How does all this stuff work?
Yeah.
Um, so it can be good and bad, but and again, it's all based on those personal values and interests and desires and things like that. If I, let's say I have no kids and I'm never going to have kids and I am just a type A workaholic kind of guy.
Okay.
Maybe I don't mind doing on call for whatever, right? But let's say I throw a kid or two in the mix, or family, or a sick loved one, uh, some other personal situation. Well, maybe now, like taking those on calls is just not such a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Things in
For
our
sure.
lives, yeah, things in our lives change, uh, circumstances change, our own personal interests and needs change. These are all things that help us get to that point. But I think if you have an interest in something in a particular area genuinely, I would not, how would I put this? I would not move the circle for making a broad change too far out to start. I would learn about how you would branch out. And then if you
Hmm.
start looking at things like a DevOps and Kubernetes and all those things that build out from there, and you say, "Oh, that's cool. I gotta get into that." That's more clearly what you can follow.
Okay, yeah. So I think some of what you try to summarize a little bit of that. Certainly, your family situation, as it changes or evolves, can affect whether you're going to switch careers. If you're in something already that's heavily, like your example, involves a lot of on call, or even if it's not on call, just a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And you get married, you add you add family members. Suddenly, those hours of work look less attractive, and you ask yourself, okay, can I change jobs and get away from that? And you look at the field you're in, and you're like, probably not. So now you really are looking at a career change. I'm going to move from this industry I'm in, this role I'm in, to something that doesn't require me to work 12, 15 hours a day, because I have people that I want to see and they want to see me. Um, Also, something that you mentioned is your own interests. What do you like? Do you like automation? Do you want to learn some other skill in another industry? Maybe it's project management. As people who, for you and I, we've been in IT forever, we know how to manage projects because we've had to do it over many, many years. But we may not have official project management credentials that would allow us to actually become a project manager. But there's enough similarity there that we might find interest in that, and decide, I'm going to pursue that a little bit. So we do what you're talking about, and you kind of broaden the circle a little bit, and you figure out, what does project management involve. I know this little bit, and I'm going to broaden it out to here and see if I still like it. I'm going to keep going. As I keep going and investigating, I decide this looks really interesting. And something I did is I took some classes at a local training center, and the more classes I took, the more I liked it. And so it was pretty easy for me to continue down that path and change careers from being a call center supervisor to transitioning into full-time DBA work, and built a pretty good career on that.
Hmm. The one thing I would call out is, and I think you're speaking to it pretty well. Uh, uh, Career changes, even in the same field, or changes in focus, can be really big commitments. I mean, if I start out in user support and I decide I want to be a DBA, or I want to focus on report writing or something like that,
Hmm.
there's a skill set that has to be built sometimes from the ground up, and
Right.
that is
Yeah.
it's a time commitment, it's an energy commitment, um, and while we can, unfettered by children and their family or things like that earlier in our careers, make these changes and maybe even make a couple of them, it's going to get harder and harder as it goes. So, as captains of our own careers, we need to make sure that we are good stewards of our time and our energy. And starting small with interest leading to interest in how something is done, leading to, yes, I think there's a benefit. Now, how do I gain that benefit?
Hmm.
That growth is is going to be important because it's going I don't want to use the term slowness. The deliberate nature of us doing a real investigation is going to benefit us to help us make the right change.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. A career change is a huge investment. It takes time, it takes energy, and those are other things that you have to think about. And you've added, in our example, you've added people to your family that you want to spend time with. Well, guess what? Um, in order to do that, you think you need to make a career change, but to do that, you probably have to spend less time with the people that you're trying to spend time with, at
Yeah.
least in
So,
the short term, so
mhm.
that you can get to that place where you can dial back the work hours.
Yeah.
In our hypothetical example, and I think Spirit is talking about some things that he's learned about the industry that he's in, and what has become meaningful for him there in the comments. So we've talked a little bit. So we've talked at great length about how to make a job change. How do you know when you should make a job change? We talked about how do you know when to make a career change, and we're coming up on about an hour. We don't necessarily have to stop then, but let's spend, I don't know, make 10 or 15 minutes and talk a little bit about salary negotiation in those two scenarios. And they're probably pretty similar. I'm going to guess that they're similar. But salary negotiation is something that I see a lot of posts about on LinkedIn. It gets more and more coverage over the last few years, I think. What advice and information or ideas do you offer people, or would you offer folks about salary negotiation?
Um, the first thing I would remind people is
Always
that,
ask for more money. No kidding. Go ahead.
well, I mean, you wouldn't ask for less, right?
True.
But, um, you know, a, getting offered a job is not a favor. It is not a gift. It is not some benevolent company is doing out of the grace of their own heart to
Hmm.
you as a blessed recipient, right? It is a business agreement. We agree to pay you X, you agree to do and commit to Y, right? So
Yeah, it's an
uh,
exchange.
it's absolutely an exchange. And in order for us to start out when we get an offer as happy as we possibly can and as satisfied with the whole transaction and process
Hmm.
of finding a job. We're really hoping we get this job. Yes, we got the offer letter. The salary is not right. What do we do? Um, we have to understand what we will take, what our value is, how we
Hmm.
provide that to the company, and we have to come up with a number that is reasonable. Um, and there are all sorts of things that can happen in salary negotiation. You can get lowball offers. Um, you can get a really good offer with terms that you don't particularly like. So you like the salary, but you don't like the other benefits that come with it. um,
So, like, not enough vacation, for example.
exactly. Yeah. Um, Not enough vacation. Not enough. Like if you're going to be uh, a salesperson, you're going to travel to client sites, you're going to do it every day, day in, day out. But you're not going to get a company car to do it, and they're not going to
Wow.
properly reimburse you for using your own vehicle. Well, it's not. Yeah, you see, it's not just the number; it's everything together. Um,
Right.
so So what I would suggest is and people can certainly disagree with me. Um, and I will totally understand and support you if you like outright disagree with me. But I have a reason for doing it this way. If you're excited about the opportunity and the money is not unreasonable
Mm-hmm.
and the benefits are good, so you like most of the offer, it's the salary that needs more work. Unless you are like in the $200,000 and up range of salaries, usually what I would tell people is write back and say, "Hey, I'm so glad I got this offer. Thank you for sending it. I really know I'm going to do a great job for you. I'm happy with just about everything, but I would like the salary to be X plus 5,000 or X plus 10,000. If you can offer me that, then I'm good."
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said for not over negotiating and not nitpicking and going for every single dime every time,
Right.
because you also want to come away with a good feeling that you got a good deal, and a feeling that they know that they can trust you to not be like bitter and slack or whatever because you don't think you're being compensated fairly. um, for a lot of people, salary negotiation in depth, it's not fun. I mean, and sometimes it just can't be protracted. It's not healthy. It's not good. We have to determine what's right for us ourselves. But if you like most things about it, I usually say go up a couple notches, and if that number looks okay, offer that. Say you want to give me that, I'll get it signed right away. If
Okay.
you have a lowball offer, and I know people who
Well,
oh, go ahead,
how do
go
we
ahead.
know if we have a lowball offer though?
Well, I mean, this is part of you being an informed job seeker, also, right? Not only do you have to know your price, but you have to know the market as well. So
Okay.
looking at reputable sites like a salary.com, looking at I'm not sure if Dice has any good salary information lately or not, but looking at reputable sites, not just where like we surveyed 1,000 people and that's what it is.
Right.
Um, you
I've
know,
also heard so Colorado has to disclose salary information, and while we don't all obviously live in Colorado, um, I think it at least gives some sort of basis for comparison. You can compare cost of living in Colorado, whatever city where this job is being hosted from, to cost of living where you're at, and get some sort of ballpark feel. I've seen that advice out there as well.
yeah, and the distance factor and remote work throws another interesting question into that. I work for a company right now full time, as I continue my coaching career development, um, that is on the East Coast, and I have an East Coast bump in salary. So, you know, if I go to a company in the Midwest where I'm located and I say, "Hey, I like this offer, but it's way less than even I got on my last lower position. What can you
Hmm.
do?" You're going to have to kind of accept that you might not be able to get everything that you want out of it. And at that point, you need to decide if that's going to be okay for you. Because if
Right.
it's not, you don't want to go in and be bitter. It would almost be better to be honest and say, "Guys, I'm really having trouble with this offer. Even if it's not a low ball offer, it would otherwise be a good offer, but it's remote. I have higher costs where I'm at, higher cost of living. I would need this adjusted appropriately." Um, and
Yeah.
if you have, go ahead.
And I was going to say that so at different points in the conversation here about salary negotiation, you've made the point that it's not always about salary. So it's oftentimes about total job package negotiation.
Hmm.
Maybe I threw out the example of vacation. Maybe they're only offering you 2 weeks of vacation, uh, but let's say you've been in this role in this industry 10 years. I'm going to take a 99% guess that you have more than 2 weeks of vacation at your current job. And with that level of industry experience, I think it's reasonable to ask for more than 2 weeks of vacation. So there's a job package negotiation that you can do as well to help get some of the other benefits if they won't budge on money. Now,
Yep.
obviously, if you have to have X, whatever value X is for you, and they won't come to X, then you can't take the job. You can't sell yourself short and not be able to pay your bills. If it's a scenario where, let's say, you really like this company, you want to work for this company, you want to work for this particular boss. Maybe you know this person from somewhere else. I don't know. Um, maybe in those cases, you would be okay with taking a lesser salary because maybe you're trying to do a career pivot from whatever you're doing now into another niche, into another industry, and this is your starting point, and you can afford to do that. You have the room in your salary to do it. That might make uh, some sense. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. 100%. A job offer, and if you find out that you will be receiving a job offer, you should absolutely not make a, or at least I would recommend not making a decision without being sent a full benefits package that describes
oh,
what you need
absolutely.
to know. Um, uh, Again, job is not a gift. You got to know these things to make an informed business decision. Um, and you're
Yeah.
100% right. Personal story. Years ago, I made a job change from an education market to an MSP. And at this education job, I had 6 weeks of vacation a year. And I went into the negotiation. I said, yeah, let's just, salary's okay. Let's just notch it up one level. And I said, yeah, that's thing number one. Thing number two is vacation. And I believe my exact words were something along the lines of, right now where I'm at, I've got 6 weeks of vacation. And obviously, I don't expect you guys to give me 6 weeks of vacation. But would it be unfair of me to ask for 4 weeks? Um, and I was talking with the owner of the company, and he said, well, I can give you 4 weeks so long as you don't talk about it with anybody else because that's more than some managers get. I said, I don't see how it's anybody's business but yours and ours. He's like, okay, consider it done. Um, and I guess that was kind of gutsy on my part, uh, but it was what I felt was important at the time,
Sure.
and I made that choice. The way I would organize those thoughts is get the money number as to a point where it can go no further, right? And from that point, try to negotiate benefits. So, like, very much to your point, if you find your uh, let's say you wanted to make uh, 175, just to round a number, but they can only offer you 160. Now, both of those numbers are over what you've got right now.
Hmm.
Obviously, you'd be happier with 175, but you're at the point where it's just not going to budge. But you really do think it's a good opportunity. Everything else kind of aligns. You can say, okay, so I know for a fact, and you don't want to be rude, you don't want to be insulting, unprofessional, but you can say something along the lines of, I know that the market commands 175 for this job. Uh, if you're
Hmm.
gonna stay put at 160, I would be willing to consider 160 if you provide these other more tangible benefits. And usually, unless you have a very strict HR situation, those benefits are much easier to negotiate than salary, unless you're dealing with like people at the top. You're dealing with a regular HR team or person, whatever, going to
Mm-hmm.
be tougher. But yeah, I mean, it's not unreasonable to negotiate any of those things. It should all be on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are all good thoughts, good things to kind of think about as you're moving into a new job, whether it's within your own industry or you're trying to do a career pivot. It's not just about salary, but all around package negotiation when you get down to that point of an interview and a job offer. So, well, been about an hour, a little over an hour, and so we've been talking with Ian. He's a 25-year IT veteran, certified professional career coach. We've talked about how to know when it's time to make a job change, how to know when you need to make a career change and what that might look like. And we've talked a little bit about negotiating salary as part of one of these kinds of changes. So, um, yes, thank you. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So we just really appreciate everybody coming and commenting, lurking, and watching and listening. Appreciate you, Ian, for being with us here tonight as a guest, and
Sure.
so we appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Oh, no problem at all. Just quick, unsolicited plug. Uh, I don't want to overplug myself, but if anybody would have a need themselves or know somebody who would be in a position where they could benefit from a career coach with a focus in IT, I'm an up with the people kind of guy, and even if something didn't work out directly, I'd be happy to speak with anybody and gain a connection. Let's talk. Let's see if there's something I can do to benefit you. You can email me, let's talk, LETS talk at helpmyitcareer.com, or you can go and get that address at helpmyitcareer.com. Website still in progress.
Very good. And if you need any help with your career, certainly reach out to Ian. He has a lot of good ideas to help you get to where you want to be and help you even figure out where that is. Sometimes you don't know where you want to go, and so you need a career coach to help you figure that out. So, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you again, Ian, and we will talk again next week here on Ready Set Data.
Thank you all for coming. Take care. Be
Thank
well.
you.